It's not about you, right? Being an entrepreneur is not about getting. It's not about getting successful. It's not about getting money. It's not about getting market share. It's not about getting, money or respect or any of those things. It's about giving. And if you give, then you will get. If you're giving something that people want and need, and you don't have to give unconditionally. It's not charity, right? It's about participating in a system. You have to give to that system to get from that system, and that that system is society. It's right. There's these people who have real, actual jobs to be done, real problems that they are solving in their lives. And your job is to listen to what they are saying and think, what can I do that is unique to help them with that problem? What could they not do for themselves, but I can do for them and help them achieve their goals? Because that's what they're trying to do. And be part of that. And in doing that, make myself important and valuable and of service. And when I do that, I build up this foundation, playing this long game of solving problems in unique ways and looking for unique ways to help people get to their goals. Not unique ways of making money for yourself, but unique ways of contributing value to other people's journeys. Then you can build real, interesting, sustainable, valuable businesses that people want to survive. People will look at your business and say, I want that business to succeed. I want Michael to achieve his goals because he's doing something to help me achieve my goals. And it is the conversation of us doing that together that makes the whole thing work.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on another podcast episode of Entrepreneurial Truth. On today's podcast, we have Michael Ferguson, and he is going to share his experience of entrepreneurship, ups, downs, and everything in between. Michael, so great to have you on today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Cassie. It's really a pleasure.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to have you start by just sharing a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your journey. Like, where'd you come from?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's a bit of a long story, so I'll try to give you the short version of it. But I was born in Kingston, Jamaica, and grew up in the early part of my childhood in Mandeville. My father's Jamaican. His family, the Dickinson family, goes back in Jamaica for a long time. And my mom's a Canadian, though, and so we came to Canada in the late 70s. Kind of a tumultuous time in Jamaica, so perhaps she left for obvious reasons. And and I've been, trying to find my place in the world ever since. You're born in one place and you move to another place when you're a child, and it's like, I didn't, I had I had my mother's accent in Jamaica, and then I had my father's accent in Canada, and I didn't really fit in kind of in either place, so it was hard to find my place in the world. And I think that led me towards this instinct that I have to just make my own place, to make my own things, to make my own career, to make my own jobs, make my own education. I dropped out of high school when I was 15 to kind of travel the world and seek my destiny. And actually, I only just recently went back to school. I just started going back to school for the first time in 40 years.
Wow.
And I started my first business in 1998. I was a musician for a few years, trying to make it professionally. That's when I met my beautiful wife, who's a nurse, and we've got 4 kids together, which we raised here in Vancouver. And I started my first business just trying to find something, to express my creativity that could actually make a living for a family. And just through a series of happenstances, and we can talk about what some of those are, because a lot of them are not anything that I did, but just things that other people did. But it was my job to recognize that they were happening to me, that these people were trying to help me. I had to recognize that help when it came, which is sometimes difficult to do, and take advantage of it. And, started a business at the early part of the .com revolution that turned out to be quite a good move financially for me and the family. And and then things just kind of continued on from there. I've started businesses, kept track of the great people that I work with in those businesses. I've started 5 companies now and managed to exit 3 of them. And I love doing it. And now I kind of dedicate my time to mentoring other startup entrepreneurs. I work with the tech transfer office at the University of British Columbia, and meet a lot of entrepreneurs one-on-one and just try to be helpful and they tell me they appreciate they appreciate it. So as long as they keep saying that, I'm going to keep doing it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I mean, we had an interesting conversation when we first spoke, and there's so much that I want to unpack, but I know our time is like limited. So I want to make sure that our listeners get the most use of your time, right?
Yes, of course.
So I want to start at the beginning, right? So you dropped out of school, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
And
I
you're
did.
traveling the world. Explain to me what that looks like and how did you accomplish that?
That's an interesting part of the story, because I was young, right? I was 15,
Right.
and I came to my mom, and who's amazing, and is my entrepreneurial inspiration. Actually, she came from Jamaica with me and my younger brother, single mom. She was a nurse, and decided that she hated nursing. It was very, very challenging. She was working late nights and couldn't, she tried to work nights so she could spend the days with us, but then she was always so tired, and she just decided, this is not working for me. I need to start a business of my own and be in charge of my own life and my own hours and so on. So she left nursing and started a business. So she was really inspirational to me my whole life in that way. And this next story, I think, is maybe going to shock a lot of your listeners. But I came to my mom and said, look, Mom, this is not working for me. I can't be in school here. They're not teaching me the things that I want to learn. I was getting like off the charts good marks in some classes, and other classes that weren't interesting me, I wasn't even showing up. So, I just wasn't the kind of kid who was probably going to fit in and do well in school, looking back on it now. But anyway, I came to her and I said, look, I have to leave, and I'm on a journey. I have to figure out what's wrong in the world and what my place is in it and how I can try to help fix the world and make it better, because I was pretty depressed. And I need to, what I want to do, Mom, is I want to drop out of school and I want to go back to Jamaica, and I want to live with Leslie Brown. And Leslie Brown was a friend of the family who had become a Rastafarian and, left his businesses. He moved out to the country, and, he was living out there kind of like an intentional community in the hills outside Kingston. And as I said, this is what I want to do. I heard Leslie's doing this thing. I think it sounds amazing. I think, he might be right. Maybe the world is coming to an end, and I need to be ready, and I want to find out what's happening. I want to drop out of high school and go there. And she said to me, okay, when do you think, when do you want to go? Do you want to go now? And I said, yeah. She said, okay, well, we've saved up money for your education. We can use that. This sounds like a good education for you. I think this is something you need. And she looked at me and saw that I was searching, and that
Wow.
I think she agreed that things were not working out for me the way that I wanted. And she was always super brave. She bought the tickets for me, and, helped me organize the trip. And I was just a kid, right? What did I know about traveling? And, helped me get there. And I remember she's the whole time she put on this really brave face. But I know from later talking to other people, she cried the whole time I was gone.
Oh.
Just walking around the house, looking at pictures of me. It must have been very, very hard for her, but she always supported me. And so I went to live with Leslie. That was really interesting experience. I lived with a bunch of people who had never read a book other than the Bible. Their whole life, like that was their life, was this religious quest, waiting for the world to end, for the river to overflow its banks and drown the West, and the Black Star Liner was going to come and take them back to Africa. And there's this, white kid, in that community of people, I'm clearly white. My other brothers, their mother's Black, so like they in Canada they're Black, in Jamaica they're they're red, but I was just different. I looked different, and I sounded different, and I thought differently than they did. And I think in some ways I had a real impact on them too, just to think skeptically about what it is that we are really doing here, because I was searching, right? So I was asking questions, why is that? Like, why is it Africa we want to go to? I'm half of my family is from Europe. Shouldn't I be wanting to go there instead? What is it that we're really doing here? And what is this book really telling us, and all of that? So, I learned a lot when I was there about being a man, being on my own for the first time in a group of people who really value manliness and, kids grew up in Canada a little bit soft, I will say. And
Mhm.
that was not, I was not in a soft place. And so I hardened my edges up pretty fast and learned to, hold my own and have hard, deep conversations, and, developed my own sense of the world, which ultimately led me to the understanding, I think, that, that the river wasn't going to overflow its banks and the world wasn't going to get drowned, and I wasn't waiting for the end of the world. This world was one in which I really needed to make an impact. And so I came back to do that. 17 years old, moved out on my own, started my own life.
Wow. So, okay. So you go down there, you get an education, and you educate. You come back here at 17, and you're like, you know what, Mom? Thanks. I did it. I'm now going to come back and I'm going to start my own thing. And she's looking on you like, okay.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, now it's on you now. Like, I did my part, and now it's on you. Right. So, okay, you came back and you've got a plan. So, go for it, and yeah.
What was that first business and what did that look like?
Well, yeah. So there's a bit of a gap there between, that arriving back in Canada at 17 and starting a first real business. But I think that, I wanted to be a musician. I thought that what I could do was I could help the world by creating art that touched people's hearts and help them be kinder and more loving to each other. I came to the conclusion that was the problem, that we weren't curious enough about each other and we weren't loving each other enough. And I thought that I could inspire people, with music to do that. And well, a band is like a business. You have to recruit coworkers, co-founders, and you've got to make a plan and you have to execute on it. And it's got to be self-sustaining because people got to pay rent, right? Mm-hmm. And on all of that. So I learned a lot about that. And one of the things I learned is there's a big gap between musicians who are serious about building a career in music and musicians who just love to play music because they love it. Yeah, I mean, I worked pretty hard at it for 4 or 5 years and met a bunch of great people, and I think played a lot of really wonderful music at the time. But it became clear to me that was my first experience, I guess, of having a goal that I did not reach. I wasn't able to build a real self-sustaining career for myself as a musician. And I went up tree planting in the northern part of BC and just kind of I'm going to make some money here and think about what my next move is going to be. And on my way up, I stepped off the bus in the Prince George bus station and my dreadlocks down to my waist and a top hat on my head. And I stepped off the bus and saw the most beautiful thing that I've ever seen in my life. I'm getting a little misty just thinking about it, honestly. Yeah, my wife, Deborah, she was there. She was in nursing school in her 3rd year of nursing. And she was just so kind and beautiful and hardworking and smart. And we've been together ever since. That was Earth Day, 1990. I stepped off the bus in Prince George bus station. I met my wife, and who transformed my life completely.
Wow, that's so awesome. And that where you were and that space that you were meeting her, she's grounded in terms of her profession, what she's doing. Mm-hmm. How did that change your thought process on what you were doing and what your next steps were going to be?
Yeah, I think that I didn't fully understand how much you have to sacrifice in the short term to get to your longer term goals. I was always looking for everything always to be winning. We wrote a great song, we got a great gig, we got a record deal, we went on a tour, everything always had to be forward. But actually, sometimes you need to stop and consolidate what you have. And, she was going to school and it never even really occurred to me that was a thing that you would do, take time to not be working, to not be a working musician. I mean, I thought about going to music school. I actually did some classes in music school, studied percussion briefly. But it was always about, it wasn't like stop, learn, figure out what's what, and then take a step forward. And I think she really taught me there about making an investment, that sometimes it feels like it's just like you're just paying money out or time out or energy out. But sometimes you just have to do that. You have to make these longer term investments. And I think it was that transformation in my thinking that led me to, do things that at the time do not feel like good things. You're working for somebody, you're interning at a company, whatever, and you don't like it. It's work you don't want to do. You put whatever it might be. Maybe it's like data entry or fixing computers, or I was doing all kinds of technical stuff because I knew machines because I spent a lot of time in recording studios, and that just didn't feel like work I wanted to do. I got to take this job because now I have a family and I'm trying to make rent and all these things, but also because there's something that I want to get out of it that is not in the thing itself. It's bringing something into me. I'm investing this time and energy in me. I'm not just investing it in somebody else's company, doing work for them. I also am doing it for me. And sometimes other people get more out of it than you do in the short term, but you are playing the long game. That's what I realized. I got to play the long game here. And yeah, again, just I met good people and the timing was right with the internet kind of exploding when it did. And I had just, all along following this path of like trying to make investments in myself and make investments in trying to build a career that could support a family and, still with this picture in my head of changing the world for the better, but realizing that it was going to be a longer game than I thought. And I just was very lucky along that way, being open in that way to, okay, this next turn doesn't have to take me where I want to go, as long as it is directionally correct and taking me in the longer route. Being open to that put me in touch with a lot of really wonderful people and who taught me a lot, who mentored me, who gave me opportunities. One of my very first jobs, like jobs, was for a company called SoftQuad, and the VP of technology there, a man named Bruce Sharp, he knew that I was working on the internet and I had like done a bunch of programming stuff and I was very creative and hardworking. And so I had, seen some of the interesting potential of the internet before other people did, I think. And I had done some interesting work on it that he'd heard about. And he said, I want you to come work for me. And we talked about it and he told me what the salary was. And I said, that's fantastic. I'll take it. It was like more money than I'd ever thought I would be making at that time of my life, which looking back on it now, is like, I don't know how people live on that. But anyway, I was very excited about it. Said yes, shook hands. And then I realized he hadn't told me what the job was. And I said, well, what am I going to be doing, Bruce? And he said, I hadn't really thought of that either. But I tell you what, just show up and I want you to go to meetings. Just walk around the office. Every time you see a meeting, I want you to go in that meeting and I want you to sit down in that meeting and listen to what's happening. And after the end of 2 weeks, you're going to come back and tell me what you think your job should be.
Oh, wow. And
that was completely transformative to me. No one had ever really done anything like that for me other than my mom. And, I'm so thankful to Bruce now for having done that. And, almost everything that I have done in my career, I trace back to that moment of going to these meeting rooms with people much smarter and more experienced than me, talking about their problems and just listening to their problems and thinking, how can I solve that? What could I contribute to that they are not already contributing? They've got a PhD in physics or they're an engineer. I'm not either one of those things, but I'm me. What do I have that I could bring to this conversation that's different and interesting? And I ended up doing kind of strategic product management, looking at how you can take technologies from one part of the business and apply it in a different part of the business to build a new product and solve new problems and really help people.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And looking at where you are now, how have you implemented those strategies along the way to like help you to where you are now?
Yes. Well, so I said, that was a profound lesson for me. And one of the lessons, and I pass this along to other people when I'm talking to them about building their companies, which is, it's not about you, right? Being an entrepreneur is not about getting. It's not about getting successful. It's not about getting money. It's not about getting market share. It's not about getting, money or respect or any of those things. It's about giving. And if you give, then you will get. If you're giving something that people want and need, and you don't have to give unconditionally, it's not charity, right? Mm-hmm. It's about participating in a system. You have to give to that system to get from that system. And that, that system is, society. It's right. There's these people who have real, actual jobs to be done, real problems that they are solving in their lives. And your job is to listen to what they are saying and think, what can I do that is unique to help them with that problem? What could they not do for themselves, but I can do for them and help them achieve their goals? because that's what they're trying to do, and be part of that. And in doing that, make myself important and valuable and of service. And when I do that, I build up this foundation, playing this long game of solving problems in unique ways and looking for unique ways to help people get to their goals. Not unique ways of making money for yourself, but unique ways of contributing value to other people's journeys. Then you can build real, interesting, sustainable, valuable businesses that people want to survive. People will look at your business and say, I want that business to succeed. I want Michael to achieve his goals because he's doing something to help me achieve my goals. And it is the conversation of us doing that together that makes the whole thing work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I found that across the board that, I've come across so many interesting people in doing this podcast that are trying to help other entrepreneurs,
Yes.
get from point A to point B. What are some of the key takeaways that you think would definitely help someone? Let's say, for example, they're going into a business to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're just starting out their journey and they want to be able to soak in as much knowledge as possible. What are the things that you think would help them, let's say, to gain the valuable skills to be able to exit from that business, right? And start their entrepreneurial journey?
Yes, yeah. So there's a few things, the sort of frameworks that I like to apply, and it took me years to figure these things out and learn to use them effectively. And if I can help somebody do it a little bit earlier than me, then maybe that's helpful. So this is one of the things that I talk about when I'm talking to people starting companies. I really love the jobs to be done framework. Sometimes if you Google it, you'll find it under JTBD, job to be done. And the idea is that everybody has got a job that they're trying to do. And when people don't buy products, they hire them. They hire them to help them do a job. And one of my favorite examples of this is from a book by Clay Christensen, where he talks about how there was this fast food company that wanted to make a better milkshake. And so they interviewed a bunch of people about what they could do to make the milkshake better. And people were like, it's hard to suck through the straw. Can you make it a little bit thinner? Because then I could drink it more quickly while I'm eating my food. So they did that, and they found that sales went down, especially in the morning. And they went to look at what people were doing. They didn't realize so many people were buying milkshakes in the morning, and people were buying milkshakes in the morning, but they were not buying any food. So they went and took a look, what is it that people are doing there? Why are they doing that? And why is it that a thin milkshake does not work, whereas a thick one did? And it turned out that what people were doing was they were buying milkshakes to take on their commutes when they were driving. And the actual competition, this is one of the interesting points here, the actual competition against that milkshake is what the milkshake is doing. The job that they were hiring it for, the job they were hiring that milkshake to do was to give them something to do with their hands and keep their mouth entertained while they were driving, and it had to last the whole commute. So making it thin and making it go quickly was the opposite of what they wanted. They actually wanted it to be thick and to last longer. But the insight's even deeper than that. What are the competitive products to that job to be done? So if that's your job to be done, not to drink a drink while you're eating a meal, but to keep your mouth and hands and mind entertained when driving a car, what is the real competition? The real competition was cigarettes. People didn't want to smoke. They wanted something to put in their mouth, but not a cigarette. Oh. So the actual competition to the milkshake, the alternative product, is a cigarette. And thinking about it that way, thinking about the job that the person was trying to do and the gains they were trying to get and the pains that current product was sending, right? So, a milkshake is not really that good for you, right? But it's better for you than a cigarette.
Right.
Right. So the pains you don't have to totally solve the pains. This is one of the really interesting insights is you just have to identify the pains that currently exist. You can't probably ever get those pains to zero. But if your pains can be less and your gains can be greater, you could get your product hired to do that job to be done. But you have to think about it from the perspective of the person. Not, I'm trying to sell more milkshakes, but this person is trying to accomplish something in their life. They've got this long commute. They hate listening to talk radio. They don't want to drink coffee because they've already had lots of coffee, and they don't want to start smoking. So how can I help make their life better? What is the job to be done that I can help them do? It's their job to be done, and I'm giving them the tool to do that job, which is this milkshake. And thinking about your work that way, whether it's providing tools to nurses to use in clinic, to help them manage the charts better, or whether it's building better sales tools for people trying to sell complicated products online. Thinking about it this way, they have got a job to be done, and it's not my job, it's their job. And my job is to facilitate them doing that job better, give them more gains and fewer pains in the pursuit of that job. That has been really, really interesting insight, because it's not just in the product space. When I was walking around and going into those rooms and listening to those engineers talking, I was thinking, what is their job to be done? And how can I be a participant in that? How can I be the tool that they use? How can I make myself available to help them do their job better? And I found all kinds of things that engineers and scientists hate to do that I actually kind of enjoy, and that I could do and help them do their jobs better. And I think in doing so, I made myself, yes, a popular person around the office, but I also accumulated this knowledge about what I could do out in the world in my own company and my own business to and keep myself of service to those people. So all my next few products were all focused on technology-oriented tools that people could use in businesses to make their people more productive. So that was my first set of businesses. And I got all those insights just from listening and trying to put myself in that person's shoes. What are they trying to do, and how can I make it better?
Oh, man, that's awesome. That's awesome. And in the space that you're in now, in terms of mentorship, do you find that you're coming across a lot of people that are trying to solve big problems, or what are you encountering now?
Well, yeah, this is really interesting. So I do encounter a lot of people who are trying to solve big problems, and many people who have like a big idea, a big technology, a big insight, a big innovation. Often I find that the connection between the two is not as strong as it could be, right? So people have some really great technology, and they think a person could use this technology to solve this big problem. I'm going to figure out how they could use this technology to solve this big problem. They don't, but nobody is trying to do you any favors and just adopt your technology because it exists. Being a solution in search of a problem is actually not a very good place to be. So many of the people entrepreneurs I work with are scientists or engineers. It's kind of deep tech, biotech, healthcare, medical devices, that kind of space. And getting them to put their product aside for a second and think, what is this person really trying to do? What is this job to be done? And then think, can I support that job to be done? To think back from the problem to the solution is good discipline. And I think it's difficult for many people to do. So yeah, my experience is every entrepreneur wants to do something big, and they want to have a big impact in the world. And people are motivated for lots of things. I have a lot of cancer in my family. And so, I just, whenever anybody comes to me and says, I've got something, that could potentially help people who have cancer, or to help with cancer diagnosis, I'm like, that's fantastic. But it takes a little bit of extra discipline then in that context, because I'm so focused on that, thinking about it from my point of view. It takes a little bit of extra discipline to think, well, it's not about the person with or the family member of the person with cancer, as I am. It is about, there is this oncologist, and the oncologist has got a job to be done. And how can I help that oncologist do their job better? And will my innovation fit into that environment? It's best, of course, if you thought of your innovation in the context of a job to be done. If that was your original motivation for doing it. But even then, people get kind of myopic, they get a little bit fascinated with their own ideas and their own technologies. And they kind of lose sight of this idea that somebody else is taking on things and adopting things and paying for things for their own motivations, not because you built a thing and you want to make money from it, but because they have something they really want to accomplish. And to them, that's the most important thing in the world. And I think really good entrepreneurs are empathic people. They're curious people, and they're empathic people. And they want to know what's going on with the other person. They want to they want to find out. And when they hear it, they know how to listen, and they know how to sort of project themselves into that person's experience and look at it from their perspective. That is, to me, that's like the fundamental entrepreneurial talent. If that's a thing you can do, well, then I think you're very well set up to be an entrepreneur, if you can just be disciplined about it.
Wow. And I mean, you've had companies, you've
Hmm.
exited companies,
Yes.
you're still in some now. What
Hmm.
does that look like? Like building a company, selling the company, that whole journey. What does that look like overall? And
Well,
and and were
yes.
you prepared when you first started your company to then exit it? So
Hmm.
did you have that in mind when you started?
Um, to take your questions in reverse order, I kind of had it in mind when I started, but I mean, I didn't really know what it would look like exactly. It was just sort of this abstract idea, that you make companies and, technology companies especially, and then they might get acquired. Um, uh, was I prepared? No. I'm getting better. Even now, it's hard. I mean, you can't actually prepare for everything that is going to happen. All you can specifically for everything that's going to happen, what you can do is you can create the conditions in which you can make decisions later. So just, you want to put yourself, you don't want to, there's some ways in which creating a business is about narrowing down the options, right? I'm not focusing on this huge multi-billion-dollar market, because how can Michael Ferguson, with however much money I have, really make a product for $1 billion market? I have to actually narrow my niche down until I can figure out how I enter that $1 billion market with a smaller niche. So some of it, entrepreneurship, is about narrowing options. But in the sort of the building of the business, you want to leave as many, you don't want to curtail too many of your own options later. So you want to leave
Mhm.
yourself with the space to hire more people, don't spend all your money too quickly, don't give away your equity too fast. Make sure you've got a plan for how the equity is going to unfold, but you're keeping your powder dry, so to speak, so you could raise more money if you need to, or if you had somebody you just really wanted to bring into the business and you don't have enough money to hire them, you can offer them a stake of ownership. So you want to, one of my experiences, people narrow the wrong kind of options for themselves.
Mhm.
They narrow down their ability to be flexible minded about how the business is going to proceed later, and then they don't narrow down quickly enough what their immediate target for the product is going to be, so that they end up sort of building a product that could be applied to several different problems. And that feels good, right? You feel like, oh, I could make a product that is for, people who are doing this, and then there are these other people who are doing a similar thing that are doing that, and my product could be used for both things. That's not good. That if you're an investor, and I've been on the investor side of the table a little bit. I don't do a ton of investing because I'm more comfortable on the entrepreneur side, but I've talked to enough investors and spent enough time with them that I know they look at that and they go, no, those are two businesses and two products, and that costs twice as much, and increases, and it doesn't reduce your risk of success. It actually increases your risk of failure.
Oh, wow.
Right. So to have multiple, so risk is multiplicative. So if you
Mhm.
have, like, if one product is like, there's a 10% chance that product is going to fail, and the other product has got a 10% chance that it's going to fail. That's not a 5% chance between the two, right? That is, and it's not even a 20% chance. It's not just additive. It's like a multiplication effect. So
Oh,
you're
wow.
increasing the risk that both businesses fail. And that, investors hate that. They hate that kind of scattershot. I can't decide and really focus and commit. They want you to commit. And I think that's good discipline. I think you do need to commit and really understand a particular person's problem, a particular person's job to be done, and you're trying to help them. And then in the pursuit of that, you want to leave yourself, you don't want to curtail too many options about how you raise money, who you hire, whether or not you're going to keep the same people in your company. I mean, I don't mean to jump around a little bit, but there's this other really, this is the point that I want to make, because I see a lot of entrepreneurs making this mistake. What you want from your team when you are starting and building a company is a different thing than you want from your team when you are maintaining and growing it. And those are really two different teams, really. And it could be that the same person that works with you and for you, it's not so much about the founders, but more about that sort of first round of hires that you might do. It's possible that those people could also be good builders as well as good operators,
Mhm.
but it's not very common for that to be true. People are either builders or operators. And what happens, I see them do this a lot. I'm trying to build a thing and it's a technology thing. So I've got this guy I want to hire. And to make him feel good, I give him a job title like Chief Technology Officer. And then now my business needs to transition to operating, and I don't have an operational CTO. I've got the CTO that's we're building, but I'm not really building the business anymore. Now I'm operating it. So I need to bring in a different CTO, but I already have one. And so you're going to create this conflict. Are you going to bring the person in to report to your initial CTO? Well, but they're more senior and their skill sets are more attuned to what you're doing now. You're going to demote your existing CTO. I mean, nobody likes that.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful about overcommitting early on. You want to leave yourself the flexibility to bring other people to, make changes for what's for the good of the business. And I think there's a way to do that where you talk with people in the early stages and you say, look, I'm hiring you to help me build this business. When we are done that, I'm then going to hire some operators to come in and help me operate it. This means that your tour of duty with my company is going to come to a logical end, and I'm going to work with you to help you transition to something new. And maybe you can have that job too. I mean, feel free to apply for that new job when it comes up, because maybe you will have learned about the business to do it. But we have to have an open conversation and not pretend that that's happening. So that's one of the mistakes that I see a lot of entrepreneurs make.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I think it's lack of knowledge, right? Because when you're starting a business, you really don't know unless, you have really great mentors coming in or something like that. You really don't know. So you like starting a business, you're like, okay, we're in it for the long run. We're all going to build it together. You'll have a great title. You'll have a great title, and we'll all just do the thing, not thinking long term. So
not playing the long game.
The long game. So that brings me to a great point. Like, what are some of the things like this that you think are important when starting a business for, the young entrepreneur to think about?
So one of the things, you want to think about control of the business in the right way. So, you want to put people in charge of things, and your ability to put other people in charge of things is something that you want to maintain. You don't want to be in charge of the things. Right. But you want to be responsible for putting people in charge of the things. And you want to maintain that, I think, for as much as you can. Don't give that away unless you are bringing somebody in who can help you because they're, a very experienced entrepreneur, and they can help you find the people to delegate to and then help you with the delegation. But I think one of the things that people do is they mistake this like operational control of the business with governance control of the business. And they give people roles and titles like Chief Technology Officer and make them an officer of the company and put them on the board of directors and give them shares. Well, officers, directors, and shares are part of the governance of the business, not part of the operations of the business. So you want to separate those two things and really do think of them separately. What you want from governance, good governance, is, lots of experience, lots of, talent, yes, and good structures of, fail safes. If people make bad decisions, you can back out of it and make sure that you're always on the right side with the regulators and that you've got good, well-structured, financial records and all of that. You need somebody to look at the records and say, yes, this is good enough. That level of governance you need to have. That's separate from, I need a person who can write good software. Some person writes good software. That's fantastic operationally for your business. You need somebody else to be able to work with you to figure out, is that the right software for us to have built? And are we funding it the right way? And are we thinking about, how to incent the person who's creating the technology the right way? Are we giving them stock options? Are we paying them enough money? What should our philosophy be about building the business? So working in the business and working on the business are two different things. And you want to be careful about mixing the two up. And my experience is that a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, they hold on to the wrong kind of control, because you start with control of both things. And they kind of get merged together in your mind, and you end up sort of holding the whole thing together, and you don't bring in enough people to help you with the governance, and then you bring or the wrong people, and you don't bring in people on the operation side, or you bring in the wrong people. And so those are really two different kinds of organizational leadership. You, as the founder of the company, are responsible for both at the beginning. You need to think because they're different skill sets and it's different jobs and it's different people that you want support from.
Oh, so let me ask you, okay. So how do you find those people? Where are the best resources to find the kind of people that you think would be able to probably not talent to write the software, but necessarily like run the business?
Right. You mean operationally, or do you mean from a governance perspective? Well, operationally, you know, I mean, in some ways, operationally is the easiest part, right? Because the KPIs of the business are just they're just right there.
Right.
I mean, you've got some software that you need to write, so you need a good software engineer.
Right.
And
So
so
I guess I should have said governance. I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. I mean, I think there's some subtleties on the operational side which are worth thinking about, right? Because it's not just about does the person do a good job or not. I mean, you can find people to do that, but is the person a good match culturally for your values and how you want the business to operate? So I think there's some things that you want to be thinking carefully about there. At Ayogo, for example, my last company, one of the things that we would say to ourselves, we were a software company, and a lot of software companies say like, oh, we want to hire the very best software engineers we can find. And it makes sense to think that, you know, you're making software and you want really, really good people. But we would always say, we're not doing that. Our job is not to hire the best software engineers. I mean, we're not putting people on the moon and we're not curing cancer. I mean, we don't need the best software engineers. What we need are sufficiently good software engineers who also match our core values. We want people who have like a broad set of life experiences, for example. When we're making software for patients who come from a bunch of different communities, you know, we're working in advanced kidney disease, so there's a lot of, you know, this is very prominent among Hispanics, you know, the American Black community. You need people who can really put themselves in the lives of these patients and write software for them. So we would say we want a sufficiently good software engineer who is also the kind of person who could write the correct software, who knows what software to write. On the governance side, I mean, it's hard to find a replacement for experience. Experience is just so valuable there. There's so many things that could go wrong. Some things are not obvious. Financial statements are hard to read. And so in some ways, bringing an early investor into the business who has got a lot of experience and has built companies and successfully grown them and, you know, had built the kind of company that you would like to have, that person could be a really good person to bring in as an early investor. You want to kind of incentivize them to work alongside the business. You just want to be really careful about not putting that person into operational roles. Right. So when we would bring in early investors or put directors on our board of directors, we hired external directors. A lot of entrepreneurs wait to do that or don't do it try to avoid doing it, bringing in independent directors to sit on the board of directors, because often the founder is the CEO and the CEO actually reports to the board. So you're like making that person your boss. So people avoid it. But actually, I think it is really important to have oversight. It's just you want to make sure that they understand what the boundaries of the job is that you're offering them. Right. So we would always put into our director agreements that the directors are not involved in the operations of the business. We'd be really explicit about that. Wow. Your job is not to say this is how the company should operate. Your job is to help guide the CEO to make good governance decisions, to make sure that we are compliant from a regulatory point of view, that our ethics are correct, you know, that we are hiring people the right way, and when we fire people, we fire them the right way. You know, this is the job of governance and governance of the board. So we would bring people onto the board, constrain the role well, but within that constraint, recognize that you've now got a brain trust of people who are in charge of giving guidance to the CEO. And then you can go as the CEO, you're in charge of operating the business. So go and operate it the way that you need to operate it and hire the good people to do the operation, and look for guidance from your board to help you do that. Some of them have a lot of experience in operations and can give you advice. But in that context, it's advice. Right. On the governance side, we need to see audited financial statements. On that side, it's an order, right? You work for them now, and that's good. Yeah. It's good to have somebody looking over your shoulder in the right way at the right time to say, look, this is what you need to do. This is how you do it right. And because,
Wow.
we've seen lots of times where the governance and the operations get mixed up, and the CEO is just like, they're unfettered. They can do whatever they want. And then they end up doing things that are offside. They get the company in trouble later. Sometimes it's really, really terrible, sexual harassments and hiring people for terrible reasons and firing them for terrible reasons. So sometimes it can be really bad, but often it's more subtle than that. Often it's just, you're kind of self-interested as the CEO, and you start running the company in the way that is good for you, as opposed to running the company in a way that's good for the company. And that's what the board is there to do, is to make sure that everyone's fiduciary responsibilities are aligned, that you are doing the right things legally and ethically to move the business forward.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I never looked on it like that, and I appreciate all of that. I mean, what do you think about peer groups? How do you feel peer groups fall into the whole ecosystem?
I'm so glad you asked that. I think, aside from deciding to call Bruce Sharp and ask him if he'd hire me, the second most important thing that I ever did in my career was I joined a monthly CEO roundtable dinner group. And once a month, there was, the people came and went a little bit, but there were somewhere between, 6 and 8 of us at any time on this dinner group. We met once a month. All of us were CEOs. The only people that were allowed to be in that room were CEOs. We closed the doors. When the waiter, we would be out for dinner, and we got a private room in the back of a restaurant. When the waiter would come in and take our orders, we would all stop talking. And the waiter would leave, and we close the door behind them, and then start the conversation again. It's very important that it was private, that it was confidential, and because we would tell each other what was really going on in our hearts and in our minds, because it is very, very lonely to be the CEO. It's very hard to turn to your board and say, look, I'm not totally sure what I'm doing here, right? Or to say to your investors, I'm doing a thing, but I'm not sure it's going to work out. I'm waking up at night, I feel anxious, or your employees don't want to hear that from you. Sometimes you can't even talk to your spouse about it. I mean, do they really want to hear that the company that you invested the mortgage in, you're not totally sure it's going to work out? No one wants to hear that kind of uncertainty, but other CEOs know. That's actually the world you live in. That's the water in which you are swimming. And it's very valuable just to be in that room and say, this is what's happening in my business. This is the problem I'm having in the business. This is the problem I'm having in my heart right now. Like this is a person I really, really care about in the company. I've come to really love them, actually, because we worked together for so long, but they're not working out in this area of, I have to do something about it, and I'm feeling terrible. You have other people to talk to. And so we met once a month for, now it's been 16 years.
Wow.
And super valuable. I mean, I really recommend doing that. If you don't have one of those, find it. I try to set those up here in Vancouver if I can. So if anyone listening to this is in Vancouver, feel free to reach out to me. I'm putting together some more of these roundtables, and it's so valuable to have somebody else to talk to who knows what you're going through.
And do they have to be in the same space as you, like in software? Or?
Honestly, it's better if they're not. It's better that you have them sort of like, you want a sort of range of perspectives there, because you're saying, look, I'm having, that the person is an engineer and that their job is software is only part of the discussion. Right. The really interesting part of the discussion is, I'm having a problem with them and their performance, and I feel like I need to do something about it. Whether you're a software company, or you're selling t-shirts online, or whether you sell, eyeglass frames. I was talking to the entrepreneur up the street who sells eyeglass frames in a little store. I mean, she has exactly the same kind of problems that I have as CEO of a 150-person technology company. Very, very similar kinds of problems, but from a different perspective, and a different enough perspective that actually she says things to me that I never would have thought of. And I just really love hearing those different perspectives. So it's important that people in the room are not competitive. So you don't want to be in competitive businesses. That's important, so people don't feel inhibited from speaking. But beyond that, I think you want a variety of different kinds of businesses and perspectives and backgrounds, a mix of women and men, and, different, family histories, and, people who are started their businesses, came to the city or came to Vancouver to start the business, or lived in Vancouver their whole time, as children and starting businesses here. I mean, all of those different perspectives about how to be a good entrepreneur, how to be a good leader, how to be a good person while you're being a good leader. That's what you're talking about. And the more range of experiences people can draw on, the better the advice will be.
Amazing, amazing. Wow. So much to unpack. And as I said, there's so much to unpack. There's so much I think that they've gained already from what you've shared.
I hope so. Thank you.
Is there anything else that you would love to share with our listeners?
Yes. Look, when I sit on panels and I give a lot of talks about entrepreneurship, and one of the questions I get asked is like, do you have any advice for new entrepreneurs? And I say, the first thing that I say is, yeah, don't do it. Don't start a company. Don't do you're almost certainly going to fail. And most businesses fail in the first year, and most of the rest of them fail in the second year. So you're doing something that is almost certainly going to fail. It's going to cost you a ton of money. It's highly stressful. Don't do it. And if me telling you not to do it was the thing that stopped you from doing it, well, then you didn't really care enough to do it anyway. I mean, my experience is that most people are doing what they are doing, knowing the risk, knowing how hard it is going to be, knowing that they might fail, but they feel strongly enough about it that they're doing it anyway. And I just want to say to people out there who have made that decision, who are going to go in that direction, don't go into it lightly. Mm-hmm. But if you have decided to do it, just remember you're doing something like one of the most important things that any human being has ever done. You are taking an idea that is just in your head, and you're taking it out and you're making it real in the world to make other people's lives better. Only human beings can do that. It is fundamental to who we are as human beings in the world that we can do this thing. You are doing one of the most fundamentally human, most fundamentally important things in the entire universe. And I salute you for it. And, you are, if it doesn't work out, you've learned something important to go and do the next thing with. And if you decide that the next thing is not entrepreneurship and you're going to take a job, well, you're going to bring a bunch of really valuable entrepreneurial experience to the next thing you do. So, I salute and respect everybody who's trying to do this, no matter what it is they are pursuing. I think it's really wonderful, and just want people to feel good in the midst of all the chaos and challenges and discomfort and pain and uncertainty. In the midst of all that, just remember that what you're doing is really, really, really important. And there are people out there in the world that love you and respect you for having done it.
Awesome. Can you tell everyone how they can find you?
Yes, please. I can be found on LinkedIn. That's my favorite social network. I've been on LinkedIn long enough. I just have my last name, Fergusson, with 2 S's. So Michael Ferguson, Fergusson. You can search for me on LinkedIn. I also have a website. It's relatively new. I'm blogging on various topics. I've written some articles about how to create constructive conflict in your organization and avoid destructive conflict. And so you can find that at thenewbrightidea.com.
Love it. And for everyone listening or watching on YouTube, then you'll be able to get the links down below. For everybody else listening, Michael just shared everything. I hope it was valuable. Michael, thank you so much for coming on today.
Well, it's like my great pleasure, Kizzy. Thanks very much for inviting me, and thanks so much for what you're doing.
Thank you for tuning into today's episode of Entrepreneurial Truth. One tool that I can truly recommend on how you can organize and execute systems is Notion. Notion allows you to seamlessly get information out of your head and into a centralized, organized space. Whether it's documenting processes, managing projects, or brainstorming ideas, Notion can be your go-to platform. As a special offer to our listeners, you can get started with Notion using the link in the episode description. By using our affiliate link, you not only support our podcast, but also gain access to free templates designed to kickstart your journey with Notion. These templates are specifically crafted to help entrepreneurs streamline their workflows and boost productivity. To take advantage of this offer, simply visit the affiliate link below to sign up and explore the free templates available in the resource section. Whether you're a solopreneur, managing a team, Notion can be the game changer you've been looking for. Stay tuned for more episodes where we dive deep into strategies, tools that can empower you as an entrepreneur. And don't forget to subscribe to Entrepreneurial Truth so you never miss an episode filled with actionable advice and insights. Thank you once again for joining us today. Until next time, keep innovating and scaling your business with purpose. Thanks again.